"He destroyed my American dream overnight," cried a Dallas small business owner after Ted Cruz's Take It Down Act shuttered her online shop. Now, Representative Jasmine Crockett is vowing to hold him accountable for the widespread digital devastation. Within an hour of the tearful video being posted, it was no longer the private lament of a single Texan. It was a digital wildfire. The raw, unfiltered clip of a woman sitting in her home workshop, surrounded by products she could no longer sell, became a rallying cry. Her words, spoken through a mix of anger and disbelief, were clipped, shared, and remixed across every social media platform. News producers, initially ignoring it as just another piece of online outrage, were now scrambling to book the woman, Alara Vance, for interviews. By nightfall, her face was on every major cable news network, a symbol of the unseen consequences of a law celebrated just weeks earlier as a triumph of national security. And in Washington, the office of Representative Jasmine Crockett, whose district was a mere 30-minute drive from where the video was filmed, released a terse, 3-sentence statement confirming that the Congresswoman was aware of the situation and would be taking direct action. 3 days earlier, the architect of that law, Senator Ted Cruz, was the picture of confidence. He sat in a plush leather chair in a 4th-floor conference room of a Washington, D.C. lobbying firm, the city's skyline framed perfectly behind him. The meeting was with executives from several major data security and web hosting corporations, the very companies whose technology was now being deployed to enforce the Take IT Down Act. The mood was celebratory. "The rollout has been seamless, Senator," one of the executives, a man with a crisp suit and an easy smile, reported. "Our algorithms are scrubbing petabytes of data, flagging and neutralizing potential threats with a 99.7% accuracy rate. It's a paradigm shift in domestic digital defense." Cruz nodded, a deep, satisfied expression on his face. He took a sip of water from a condensation-beaded glass. "Good, that's what we promised the American people. A safer internet, an end to the foreign-sponsored disinformation and the criminal networks that have been allowed to fester for far too long." He leaned forward, his voice taking on the familiar cadence of a courtroom argument. "There will be noise. The radical left and the civil liberties absolutists will scream about censorship. They will find some sob story, some person who claims they were unfairly targeted. It's inevitable." He paused, letting his words hang in the air-conditioned silence. "You must ignore it. This is the cost of security. It is a small and necessary price to pay for the integrity of our nation. When I testify before the Oversight Committee on Wednesday, I will make that exact point. This is a victory lap, gentlemen. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." He felt no doubt, no hesitation. The Take It Down Act was, in his mind, a legacy item, a bold, powerful stroke of legislation that cut through bureaucratic red tape to address a clear and present danger. It gave the federal government, in partnership with private tech giants, the authority to unilaterally shut down any website, payment portal, or online platform deemed a threat to national security or public order. The definitions were intentionally broad, a feature Cruz had fought for, arguing that flexibility was essential to combat an ever-evolving enemy. The idea that this powerful tool could be turned against an ordinary American citizen wasn't a bug in the system. It was a statistical improbability he was willing to accept. He was ready for his hearing, armed with charts, data points, and an unshakable belief in his own correctness. In a quiet suburb north of Dallas, Alara Vance had no idea she was about to become a statistical improbability. For the last 6 years, her life had revolved around her business, Vance Custom Leather. It started as a hobby in her garage, tooling intricate designs onto belts and wallets. But her passion and skill found an audience online. Her website, built with love and countless late nights, became her sole source of income. It allowed her to work from home, to be there for her 2 school-aged children, to build something that was entirely her own. She sold everything from custom guitar straps bought by local musicians to bespoke journal covers ordered by customers as far away as Vermont and Oregon. Her business wasn't a corporate giant. It was a testament to the modern American dream, built on Wi-Fi, a web platform, and sheer hard work. On Monday morning, she sat down at her computer, coffee in hand, to check the weekend's orders. She clicked the bookmark for her site. Instead of her familiar homepage with its gallery of rich, brown leather goods, a stark white screen appeared with black text, "Access denied." This domain has been flagged for review under the provisions of the Transnational Anti-Terrorism and Keyword Enforcement for Internet and Digital Operations and Networks Take It Down Act. Your hosting service has been notified. Alara blinked. She reread the message. It made no sense. Transnational anti-terrorism? She sold belts. She tried again, typing the URL directly into the browser. Same message. A cold knot of dread began to form in her stomach. She checked her email. There was a message from her website hosting company. A generic, automated notification informing her that her account had been suspended, pending a federal review. A second email, from her payment processing service, said the same. Her entire business, her livelihood, had been frozen, erased. Panic gave way to a frantic search for answers. She spent the entire day on the phone, navigating automated menus and being transferred from one unhelpful customer service agent to another. No one could tell her why. No one could tell her who to call. The hosting company blamed the government. The payment processors said their hands were tied. There was no appeal process mentioned, no contact person, just a digital brick wall. By evening, with her kids doing homework at the kitchen table, the full weight of the situation crashed down on her. The inventory in her workshop, the mortgage payment due next week, the school field trip fees, was all tied to the income that had just vanished. She looked at her hands, stained with leather dye and smelling of wax. She had built this with her own 2 hands, and someone in an office 1,000 miles away had destroyed it with a keystroke. The anger finally boiled over. She wasn't a political person. She voted, she paid her taxes, she tried to be a good neighbor. But this was different. This was a personal violation. She grabbed her phone, walked into her workshop, and hit record. She didn't plan what to say. The words just came tumbling out. A raw torrent of frustration, fear, and a burning sense of injustice. "My name is Alara Vance," she began, her voice shaking slightly, "and I live in Dallas, Texas. This is my workshop. This is where I make things. And today, the United States government shut down my business without any warning, without any explanation." She panned the camera over her workbench, the tools, the rolls of leather. "Senator Ted Cruz, he passed this law, this Take It Down Act. He said it was to keep us safe, but I am not a threat. My family is not a threat. I make beautiful things for people. And he destroyed it. He destroyed my American dream overnight." She uploaded the 2-minute video to her personal Facebook page, not expecting much. Maybe a few friends would see it, offer their sympathy. Then she went to bed, emotionally and physically drained. In Washington, D.C., a junior legislative aide in Jasmine Crockett's office was doing his nightly social media sweep. His job was to monitor online chatter in the 30th District, flagging any major concerns. He was about to log off when a friend from Dallas shared a video. The caption read, "You have to see this. This is happening to my neighbor." The aide, a 24-year-old named Ben, clicked play. He watched Alara Vance's plea. He watched it again. He immediately checked her address. She wasn't technically in the 30th District, but she was close, a resident of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Crockett considered her broader community. This wasn't just chatter. This was a direct cry for help. He forwarded the link to Crockett's chief of staff with the subject line, "Urgent, take it down ACT." Jasmine Crockett saw the email at 11:30 p.m. on her tablet. She was in her small D.C. apartment, preparing for a long week of committee meetings. She clicked the link and watched the video, her expression hardening with every word Alara spoke. The former public defender in her, the part of her that had spent years in Texas courtrooms fighting for people steamrolled by the system, instantly recognized the pattern. It was the arrogance of power, the casual destruction wrought by a law written in the abstract, with no thought for the real people it would crush. She thought of Ted Cruz, of his smug press conferences celebrating the act. She thought of his long career built on a philosophy that often treated ordinary people as acceptable collateral damage in service of a grander ideological goal. This wasn't a policy disagreement, it was a moral failure. "Get me everything you can on this," Crockett wrote back to her chief of staff in Bend. "Find out if there are others. I want to know how many. I want their names. Senator Cruz has a hearing at Oversight on Wednesday. I'm going to be there." For the next 36 hours, Crockett's office transformed into a rapid response command center. Ben and 2 other staffers worked the phones and scoured online forums for small business owners. The initial trickle of names became a steady stream, then a flood. There was a man in San Antonio who sold vintage t-shirts, a woman in Austin who ran an online bakery for gluten-free dog treats, a retired couple near Houston who supplemented their Social Security by selling hand-carved birdhouses on an e-commerce site. Their stories were all identical to Alara Vance's. One day they were in business, the next they were gone, flagged by an opaque algorithm with no recourse. By Tuesday night they had a list. It was over 500 names long. 500 small businesses in Texas alone wiped out in the first 2 weeks of the Take IT Down Act. Crockett's team printed every name, every business, every city, and compiled it all into a thick 3-ring binder. The binder sat on her desk like an unexploded bomb. It was more than just data. It was proof. Proof that Alara Vance wasn't an anecdote. She was the beginning of a pattern. Jasmine Crockett knew what she had to do. It wasn't about scoring political points. It was about defending the very people she had sworn an oath to represent. It was about showing the powerful that their actions have consequences, that the people they dismiss as noise have a voice, and that sometimes that voice could be heard loud and clear in the halls of Congress itself. She picked up the heavy binder. She was ready for the hearing. The House Oversight Committee hearing room was packed. C-SPAN cameras were positioned at every angle. And the press gallery was a chaotic jumble of reporters and photographers. Senator Ted Cruz entered with the confident stride of a man walking into his own celebration. He smiled, shook hands with the Republican chairman, and took his seat at the witness table, arranging a neat stack of papers before him. He was here voluntarily, a power move designed to project transparency and command. He was the author of the law, the expert, and he was here to educate the House members on its unqualified success. Jasmine Crockett was already seated on the dais, several chairs down from the chairman. She was silent, her hands resting on the table in front of her. The thick, black binder was on the floor by her feet, out of sight. She listened patiently as the hearing began, as the chairman lavished praise on Cruz for his courageous and vital legislation. She listened as Cruz gave his opening statement, a soaring speech filled with statistics on neutralized foreign botnets and thwarted cyber attacks. He spoke of national pride and digital sovereignty. He was polished, articulate, and utterly convinced of his own righteousness. Then, the questioning began. The Republican members asked softball questions, allowing Cruz to elaborate on the act's successes. The first few Democrats who spoke were aggressive but unfocused, getting bogged down in technical arguments about data privacy and constitutional law. Cruz parried their attacks with ease, swatting them away with legal jargon and dismissive smiles. He was in complete control. Finally, the chairman turned and spoke to them. "The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Texas, Miss Crockett, for 5 minutes. Jasmine Crockett leaned forward into the microphone. There was no anger in her voice, only a cold, deliberate calm. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman." She turned her gaze directly to the man at the witness table. "And thank you, Senator Cruz, for being with us today to discuss your Take It Down Act. I, too, am deeply concerned about the security of our nation and our digital infrastructure. She paused, letting the collegial opening hang in the air for a moment before changing direction. "Senator, I'd like to talk about the real-world impact of this law on our shared constituents in Texas. Are you familiar with a business called Vance Custom Leather?" Cruz's confident expression didn't waver. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible shrug. "Congresswoman, I'm not familiar with every single business in a state of 30 million people. I assume you have a point." The tone was laced with condescension, the implication clear. "Don't waste my time with trivial matters." "I do, Senator," Crockett replied, her voice remaining steady. "It's a small online business, run from a home workshop in a Dallas suburb by a woman named Alara Vance. For 6 years, she has supported her family by selling handcrafted leather goods on her website. Or at least, she did. Until Monday morning." Crockett reached down beside her chair. With a deliberate motion, she lifted the heavy black binder and placed it on the dais with a solid, definitive thud that echoed through the room's microphones. The sound made several people in the press gallery sit up straighter. "On Monday," Crockett continued, her eyes locked on Cruz, "Ms. Vance's website, her payment portal, her entire online presence was terminated without warning, flagged by the very algorithms you praised in your opening statement. She has not been accused of a crime. She has not been given an explanation. She has simply been erased." She stared at Cruz, waiting. This was the moment. The entire dynamic of the hearing had shifted. The abstract debate about botnets and foreign agents was about to collide with the story of a single human being. Ted Cruz watched the black binder land on the dais, and for the first time that morning, his placid demeanor tightened. It was a piece of political theater, and he knew it. He had anticipated it. He leaned back slightly, affecting an air of patient amusement, a professor waiting for a slow student to get to the question. "A single business, Congresswoman," he said, his voice smooth and measured. "While I am, of course, sympathetic if there has been a technical error, we are talking about a piece of legislation that protects the entire nation. I'm sure your constituents' issue will be resolved through the proper channels." "What are the proper channels, Senator?" Crockett asked immediately, her question cutting through his condescension. "Because Miss Vance has spent the last 2 days trying to find them. Her hosting company says it's a federal matter. The federal agencies she managed to reach have no record of her case. There is no one for her to call. There is no form for her to fill out. So please, enlighten us. What is the proper channel for a citizen to reclaim their livelihood after your act takes it from them without due process?" Cruz shifted in his chair. The question was a legal jab, and it landed. "There is an appeals process established within the framework of the Act, overseen by the Department of Commerce. It is robust and efficient." "Is it?" Crockett countered. "Because my office has been unable to find any publicly available information on this process. Ellery, can you provide this committee with the website or phone number for this appeals board right now?" A faint murmur went through the press gallery. Cruz's eyes narrowed. He hadn't expected this level of specific, operational detail. He had come prepared to debate constitutional philosophy, not the user-friendliness of a government web page. "That information is being disseminated to the relevant hosting providers and digital platforms," he said, a touch of irritation creeping into his voice. "It's a new program. There are bound to be some initial logistical hurdles. It is simply not relevant to the overall success and necessity of the law." "I believe it is entirely relevant, Senator," Crockett said, her voice hardening. "The right to face your accuser, the right to appeal a verdict, these are not logistical hurdles. They are the bedrock of our justice system. And with all due respect, I believe the committee needs to understand the human impact of your act, not just the statistics you've provided." She turned to the chairman. "Mr. Chairman, I would like to play a 30-second video clip, a statement from Ms. Vance herself. I believe it is vital for the committee's oversight responsibilities." The Republican chairman, a staunch ally of Cruz, immediately bristled. "Congresswoman, this is not a film festival. We are here to discuss policy with the senator. Your request is out of order." "Mr. Chairman," Crockett pressed, refusing to back down, "the senator is here voluntarily to speak about the effects of his legislation. This video is a direct testimonial of those effects. It is evidence. I will not be silenced from presenting evidence on behalf of my constituents." A tense standoff ensued. The chairman looked to Cruz, who, seeing an opportunity to appear magnanimous and unafraid, gave a slight, dismissive wave of his hand. "Let her play the video, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing to hide. I'm happy to indulge the Congresswoman's flair for the dramatic." It was a calculated mistake. Cruz believed the video would be seen as an emotional, unverified plea that he could easily dismiss as hearsay. He underestimated the power of seeing a real person's pain. Crockett nodded to her aide, who cued the clip on the large screens positioned around the room. Suddenly, the sterile, wood-paneled hearing room was filled with the image of Alara Vance's cluttered workshop. Her face, etched with genuine distress, filled the screens. Her shaking voice, raw and unpolished, silenced the room. "Senator Ted Cruz, he passed this law. He said it was to keep us safe. But I am not a threat. I make beautiful things for people. And he destroyed it. He destroyed my American dream overnight." The video ended. The screens went dark. For a full 5 seconds, the only sound was the frantic, rhythmic clicking of press cameras. The contrast between Alara's tearful, desperate plea and Ted Cruz's serene, powerful confidence was devastating. She wasn't a statistic on a chart. She was a person. A wife. A mother. A Texan. Everyone in the room had seen it. Cruz, realizing his error, scrambled to regain control of the narrative. He forced a sympathetic, yet patronizing, smile. He cleared his throat and leaned into his microphone, his voice dripping with gravitas. "Well," he began, "that is, of course, a very moving testimony, and the situation for that individual is regrettable." He paused, turning from Crockett to address the entire committee, as if bringing the adults back to the real conversation. "But Congresswoman, you cannot legislate based on emotion. Governing requires us to make difficult choices. It requires us to weigh the needs of the many against the unfortunate circumstances of the few." He leaned in, delivering what he believed would be the final, unassailable point. "Her case, while sad, is a necessary, anecdotal consequence for ensuring national security online. It is the price we must sometimes pay for a safe and secure society." He said the word anecdotal with such finality, such dismissive certainty, that it hung in the air like a judgment. He believed he had won the point, framing Crockett as a bleeding heart and himself as the pragmatic, strong leader. He had no idea he had just handed Jasmine Crockett the exact weapon she was waiting for. Her entire demeanor changed. The calm, questioning lawyer vanished, replaced by the fierce, focused advocate. Her eyes, which had been watchful, now blazed with a cold fire. "An anecdote, Senator?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. The question sliced through the room. Cruz opened his mouth to respond, but Crockett gave him no time. She flipped open the black binder. The sound of the metal ring snapping open was like the cocking of a gun. "An anecdotal consequence," she repeated, her voice rising with each word. "Let's talk about some of these anecdotes, shall we?" She looked down at the first page. Aiden Garcia. San Antonio, Texas. He runs Garcia's Vintage, an online store for classic rock t-shirts. His website was flagged by your act for promoting countercultural messaging. His entire retirement income gone. Was he an acceptable anecdote, Senator? She turned the page. Rebecca Chen, Austin, Texas, runs a small online bakery specializing in custom-designed cookies for children's birthday parties. Her payment processor was frozen because an algorithm flagged a cookie design of a cartoon pirate ship as promoting symbols of illicit enterprise. She had to lay off her 2 part-time employees. Are they an acceptable anecdote? Cruz's face had hardened into a mask of fury. Mr. Chairman, this is a filibuster. The gentlewoman is grandstanding and mischaracterizing the intent and function of this law. The chairman banged his gavel. Miss Crockett, your time has expired? Jasmine Crockett did not even look at him. She kept her eyes locked on Ted Cruz, her voice ringing with clarity and power. She turned another page in the binder. The Holloway family, near Houston. They sell hand-carved birdhouses. They have been doing it for 20 years. They moved their little business online last year to help pay for their grandson's medical bills. Your act shut them down because the wood they use, Texas cedar, was on a keyword list associated with agricultural smuggling. Their grandson has a surgery next month. Tell me, Senator, is that child's health an acceptable anecdotal consequence? She was practically shouting now, the righteous indignation of a public defender who had seen one too many people crushed by an uncaring system pouring out of her. She didn't just read the names. She told their stories, quick, brutal snapshots of lives and dreams dismantled by a faceless algorithm he had unleashed. A woman who sold quilting patterns. A young man who refurbished and sold old bicycles. A church group whose charity bake sale website was taken down. Your time is up, Congresswoman, the chairman yelled, his face turning beet red as he banged the gavel repeatedly. The sergeant-at-arms will. But it was too late. The momentum was irreversible. The reporters in the gallery were on their feet, capturing the scenes. Other members of the committee, both Democrat and Republican, were staring, mesmerized by the confrontation. Crockett raised her hand to silence the chairman, a gesture of pure, unadulterated defiance. Then she stood up. She lifted the heavy binder high for everyone to see. I have 512 names in this binder, Senator, she declared, her voice echoing in the suddenly silent room. 512 American dreams being turned into nightmares by your law, all from our home state of Texas, all shut down in the last 3 weeks. She took a step forward, leaning over the dais, holding the binder out as if to hand it to him across the chasm of the hearing room floor. So you tell me, which one of these is an acceptable anecdote? Which family's ruin is a necessary consequence? I invite you, please, read their names to the committee. The American people have the time. Silence. Absolute, deafening silence. Ted Cruz sat frozen at the witness table, his face a thunderous portrait of rage and humiliation. He was a master debater, a man who always had a response, a counter-argument, a witty retort. But he had nothing. There was no answer. To read the names would be to admit his failure. To refuse would be to prove Crockett's point, that the names, the people, the lives meant nothing to him. The cameras flashed, a strobe-like effect capturing his paralysis. The chairman's gavel lay silent on his desk. In that moment, Jasmine Crockett hadn't just won an argument. She had ripped the philosophical heart out of the Take It Down Act and exposed the cold, bureaucratic cruelty beating beneath. She stood there, holding the weight of 512 stories in her hands, the victor on a battlefield her opponent had chosen for his own coronation. Jasmine Crockett didn't stay to watch the fallout. As the chairman finally managed to restore a semblance of order by calling a recess, she simply gathered her papers, gave a small, reassuring nod to her aide, and walked out of the committee room. She was immediately engulfed by a swarm of reporters, their microphones and phones shoved towards her face, a cacophony of questions exploding around her. Congresswoman, what's your response to Senator Cruz? Do you believe the act should be repealed? Was this a planned attack? She stopped for a brief moment, her expression unreadable. She held up the black binder. The 512 names in this binder are my only comment, she said, her voice clear and firm. They are not anecdotes. They are constituents. Ask Senator Cruz which of them he is willing to sacrifice. Now, if you'll excuse me. She pushed through the throng and walked down the marble hallway, the sound of camera shutters following her like gunfire. The clip didn't just go viral, it detonated. Before the hearing was even officially adjourned, the footage was the lead story on every news site. Cable news channels abandoned their scheduled programming, playing the confrontation on a loop. Pundits dissected every second of the exchange. The thud of the binder, Crockett's cold fury, the chairman's impotent gavel banging, and most of all, the stunned, humiliated silence of Ted Cruz. The phrase anecdotal consequence became an instant meme, plastered over images of everything from a flat tire to a burnt piece of toast. Cruz's victory lap had turned into a nationally televised political disaster. The narrative he had so carefully crafted of a nation secure under his watchful eye was shattered, replaced by a simpler, more powerful story. A powerful man brought low by a freshman congresswoman defending the little guy. That night, the adrenaline was gone. In its place was a profound, bone-deep exhaustion that settled into Jasmine Crockett's shoulders. She sat on the couch in her small D.C. apartment, the television off. The infamous black binder sat on her coffee table, looking like a mundane office supply that had somehow absorbed all the day's tension. Her phone, which she'd put on silent, buzzed relentlessly on the counter. A constant, vibrating reminder of the world outside. She knew what the messages were. A mix of praise from allies and a torrent of vile, hateful threats from anonymous trolls. She ignored it and picked up a different call, the one from her mother back in Texas.
"Jasmine, I saw the news."
Her mother's voice was a mixture of pride and profound worry.
"You were something else, baby. You made me so proud."
"Thanks, Mama. But I'm scared," her mother continued, her voice dropping. "The things people are saying online, the comments under the videos of you, they're awful. People are crazy, Jasmine. Please, you be careful." "I will, Mama. I always am," Crockett said, the weariness evident in her voice. "You stood up to a powerful man today. Men like that don't forget." "I know," Crockett said, staring at the binder. "But the people in here, they don't have anyone else. If I don't fight for them, who will?" The conversation ended, but her mother's words lingered. The political victory felt distant. The private cost, the exhaustion, the worry of her family, the flood of digital poison felt intensely real. This was the other side of the fight, the part the cameras never saw. A week later, the political firestorm was still raging, but it had settled into a predictable partisan pattern. Democrats lauded Crockett as a hero. Republicans defended Cruz, painting Crockett as a radical grandstander. The debate was stuck. Then, something unexpected happened. Representative Bo Latimer, a deeply conservative, libertarian-leaning Republican from a rural district in the Texas Panhandle, went on a primetime news show known for being a friendly venue for Cruz. The host teed up a question expecting Latimer to defend his fellow Texan. Latimer, a quiet man with a reputation for blunt honesty, had other ideas. "Look," Latimer began, "I voted for the Take It Down Act. I believe we need to get serious about foreign threats, but I voted to stop Chinese spies, not to shut down a grandmother in my district who sells her prize-winning jams online, which is exactly what happened last week. Senator Cruz is a brilliant legal mind, but he's dead wrong on this. The implementation of this law is a disaster. It's government overreach, plain and simple." What Congresswoman Crockett did wasn't grandstanding. She was doing her job. She was shining a light on government hurting the very people we're supposed to serve. Frankly, conservatives ought to be thanking her for it. The host was speechless. Latimer's words sent a shockwave through Washington. He had given Republican voters and politicians permission to criticize the act without being branded a liberal. The narrative was no longer just a partisan squabble. It was a legitimate, bipartisan concern about government power. Jasmine Crockett seized the moment. The following week, she flew back to Dallas. There were no C-SPAN cameras, no marble hallways. She stood on a small, portable stage in the parking lot of a community center, the Texas sun beating down. She wasn't alone. Standing with her were Alara Vance and about 20 other small business owners, the real faces from the binder. Crockett stepped to the microphone. She didn't mention Ted Cruz by name. She didn't gloat. She defined the principle. "A few weeks ago," she began, her voice steady and clear, "a debate was happening in Washington about policy and statistics. But here in Dallas, and in Austin, and in Houston, a different reality was unfolding. It was a reality of shuttered websites, frozen bank accounts, and shattered dreams." She gestured to the people behind her. "These are your neighbors. They are mechanics, bakers, artists, and parents. They are the engine of our economy, and our government, in its rush to solve one problem, created 1,000 more for them." This was never about one law. It was about a fundamental question. Does our government serve the powerful and the well-connected, or does it serve the person at their kitchen table trying to build a better life? The people standing with me today are not anecdotes. They are America. And we are here to say that we will not allow their dreams to be dismissed as collateral damage. 2 weeks later, in a small apartment in El Paso, Mateo Rojas stared at his laptop screen in disbelief. His online t-shirt business, Sun City Graphics, featuring his unique, artistic takes on borderland culture, had been shut down by the Take It Down Act 3 weeks prior. The vague reason given was promotion of politically sensitive materials. He had been devastated, convinced his small artistic venture was over before it had truly begun, but he had seen the news. He watched the clip of Jasmine Crockett's stand a dozen times. He saw the reports about the Republican congressman who had backed her up. He saw the press conference in Dallas and felt a flicker of hope. On Crockett's congressional website, he found a link that hadn't existed a month ago. Take It Down Act Citizens Appeal Portals. On a whim, he filled out the hastily created form, uploading documents, explaining that his designs were art, not propaganda. He didn't expect to hear back for months, if ever. But the email had arrived today.
Dear Mr. Rojas, it began.
After a review of your case, the board has determined that your platform was flagged in error. Your account has been reinstated, effective immediately. A grin spread across Mateo's face, a feeling of pure relief and empowerment washing over him. He hadn't just gotten his business back, he had fought the system and won.
He immediately opened another browser tab and went to the online forum that Alara Vance had started, a community that had grown to thousands of affected business owners. He clicked New Post and started typing.
I got it back. They reinstated my site. For anyone who thinks it's hopeless, it's not. I filed an appeal last week and it worked. Don't give up. Here's the link to the form I used. Let me know if I can help anyone with the paperwork. He hit enter and watched as, within seconds, the replies started to pour in. Thank you for sharing. Can you show me what you wrote in the description? Congratulations. You're giving me hope. The lasting echo of a confrontation in a Washington hearing room wasn't a new law or a politician's apologies. It was here, in the quiet glow of a laptop screen in El Paso, where one person's victory became a roadmap for hundreds of others. A small but powerful wave of hope pushing back against the tide. What does it truly mean to be represented? Is it about grand speeches and powerful laws? Or is it about the willingness to fight for a single person whose dream is about to be extinguished? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And for more stories about the people fighting back, don't forget to subscribe.